Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the SKINBIOTHERAPEUTICS investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please simply type in your questions at any time and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company can review all questions submitted today and will publish those responses where it's appropriate to do so. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll, and I'm sure the company will be most grateful for your participation. I'd now like to hand over to Stuart Ashman, CEO. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us. We've got quite a lot of slides to get through and a couple of video presentations to add in there as well. So without further ado, we'll get started. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Stuart Ashman. I've got 27 plus years in life science medical devices. My role has mostly been the commercialization of complex science and the bridge between research and development teams and commercialization and sales teams. I'm often the architect of the strategy to place products in the markets at the right time, right place, right price, often backed by mergers and acquisitions. To that end, I led the innovation teams at Smith & Nephew and again at BSN Medical. And I joined SKINBIOTHERAPEUTICS in 2019 when it was deemed ready to move into the strategic development phase.
Good morning. My name is Manpreet Randhawa, CFO here at SKINBIOTHERAPEUTICS. Overall, I've got about 20 years finance experience. The last 11 years I've been involved in startup and early stage businesses in both PE and listed environments. My background is mainly obviously financial with some operational experience both in the UK and overseas, and a lot of that has involved M&A as well. Previously CFO of Juniper, Smoothwall and Onbone in PE and VC backed environments.
Thank you, Manpreet. So just a little bit about our platform science and our technology for those of you who don't know the company. Our platform science was born out of the University of Manchester in 2016, based on work by Professor Kath O'Neill and Professor Andrew McBain. That work focused on studies that suggested that some bacterial strains increase tight junction function via modulation of protein components. But the different pathways involved may vary depending on bacterial strains. This evidence-based thought process led to the production of a bacterial lysate and a proprietary process to develop that lysate, which when applied to the surface of the skin demonstrated multiple positive attributes such as the closing of tight junction and increased hydration and elasticity. This has multiple commercial outlets such as cosmetics, wound care and professional cleaning. The company was IPO'd in March of 2017. That particular proprietary science led to a joint development agreement with Croda PLC, which I will discuss in detail in just a moment. Our second scientific pathway focuses on the gut-skin axis. This is the superhighway that exists between the gut and the surface of the skin, and the best way to describe that in real terms is that when we eat something that disagrees with us, we come out in a rash or blotches, and that is the gut sending a signal to the surface of the skin so that we take notice. It's that axis which we exploit by delivering complex and very specific probiotic formulas into the gut, which is then balances the gut microbiome, and that's reflected on the surface of the skin via that superhighway. This scientific pathway led to a partnership with Winclove Probiotics in the Netherlands, and that led to a pilot launch of a probiotic food supplement for the treatment of symptoms associated with psoriasis. Furthermore to that, we are in the final process of preparing a product for launch to alleviate the symptoms of acne. Just talking now specifically about our strategic platform. Many of you will have seen this slide before. This is basically our strategic plan, and this is how we approach the market. It's a 5-pillar approach. Moving from left to right, the first pillar is SKINBiotiX. This is the company's core technology, that bacterial lysate that I discussed on the last slide, that's designed to promote skin health by harnessing beneficial properties of probiotic bacteria in cosmetic applications. This is very much about aesthetics. The second pillar is axisBiotiX. This is using probiotic blends, very complex blends, to address the emerging area of science that's focused on the gut-skin axis, and that's the second area that I spoke about on the last slide. Then there's SKINBiotiX. This targets the use of SKINBiotiX technology for medical device applications, including topical treatment of skin diseases, as well as accelerated wound closure and advanced wound care. And that is using the same lysated bacteria that is in pillar 1. Pillar 4 is CleanBiotiX. This focuses the use of our technology to address certain categories of healthcare-acquired infection and the potential to reintroduce good bacteria into areas where bad bacteria has become prevalent. And then finally, we have PharmaBiotics, which is basically a logical extension to the medical device and the axisBiotiX applications through a pathway of medicinal prescription RX registrations. So let me talk a little bit now about Croda. This is a slide, a set of bullet points that many will have seen before. This is for the benefit of people who are viewing the company for the first time. We started here because it is the lowest hanging fruit. Cosmetic applications require nothing more than a safety study that proves that the product doesn't damage people, doesn't hurt people. We carried that out in 2019, and that led us to a deal with Croda PLC, and specifically Sederma, who are a division of Croda PLC and form part of the Croda Beauty Care division. Their expertise is the formulation of cosmetic ingredients. They don't provide finished products, they provide ingredients. This is the biggest hit is Matrixyl that comes from the Sederma stable. This is by far and above the fastest route to market for us. It was the fastest regulatory path. The claim here, or the intention here, was to increase and enhance the skin's natural barrier. We've gone a lot beyond that. We signed the deal in November of 2019, and we're now targeting a much wider range of claims. The anti-aging market is enormous. It grows at about 5% a year. It's an extremely exciting space to be in. We partnered with Croda for many, many reasons, not least of all, they're a £6 billion FTSE 100 company, but they've got a portfolio of 12,000 plus global customers. The top 20 customers are the top 20 cosmetic companies in the world. The deal is very much royalty driven. We get royalties based on their global sales. Not only that, but we secured a future supply chain for all of the other pillars that I previously discussed. So we do have the potential to launch our own product with an own label area. The clinical trials have been successfully completed. There was 2 clinical trials done, one internally and one externally. They're very much the same trial, but just run side by side. So the science is now independently validated, and commercialization has now begun. And I will talk about that in some detail. And I do actually have a guest that's going to talk about it too. So just a reminder of the timeline on this. We signed that contract in 2019. We then went on to the replication of the lysate. Now, we hit some problems here because we had basically previously used a lysate, a strain of bacteria that the origin of which was Christian Hansen. So this was owned by the largest strain bank in the world rather. There was some commercial bumps in the road here, given that we had announced the success of the safety study. We had announced what we were going to do with Croda, and therefore the price shot through the roof because we divulged too much information. So Croda, between Sederma, Croda and ourselves, we had to go and find another strain of Lactobacillus rhamnosus. Same strain of bacteria, but from a different host. And that meant that testing was considerably more rigorous than had we used the Hansen strain. We then moved on to the mapping and selectivity through downstream processing, scale up and stability testing, then the extensions and the clinicals. If you remember that we were asked for a 12-month extension in November 23 to clinically prove that the formulation and the compound that we had was actually was going to make all the claims and substantiate all the claims that we were going to make to the market. In September of this year, we received the very positive clinical readout to those studies. And basically the next steps are the commercialization agreement, and we talk about IP filing and forecasts. In between all of that, additional samples have been issued. Samples are already out there, but there's been additional samples being issued, and basically the wider marketing is commenced. We announced that the global launch will take place at a very large, in fact, the biggest cosmetic trade show in the world for ingredients in Amsterdam in April of 2025. Please don't be under any illusions that work is not going on now. It is, and it has been for quite some period of time. This is when it's released on the global platform. I would like to add that I've had a lot of questions about this from investors and potential investors about, why aren't we launching this earlier? I actually had one investor wrote to me and asked why, and actually demanded that I tell Croda to move the trade show from April 2025 into October 2023. And firstly, I can't demand anything of Croda, and certainly Croda themselves do not have the power to move the largest cosmetic ingredient trade show in the world forward by 4 or 5 months. That simply doesn't happen. They are using their commercialization team and marketing team to get this product out there now, and it will be launched on the global stage in April next year. We also talked at the last IMC about the appointment of Dr. Surinder Chahal as an advisor to the board. Das, as he's more commonly known, has been with the company for a couple of months now, and is now sitting on our side of the table when we are in negotiations with Croda. The commercial agreements that we are negotiating now involve minimum purchase requirements. They involve a wide scale of things. I'm delighted to have Das sitting on our side of the table. Rather than listen to my dreary monotone voice, I thought it would be interesting for you to listen to Das himself, or Dr. Surinder Chahal. So, Mark, if you could roll that video for me, please. So, Dr. Surinder Chahal, better known as Das in the industry. First of all, welcome to the company, and thank you for taking the time to speak to us today. I thought it would be a good idea to walk through your background and then maybe elaborate a little bit on the journey that we've been through with Sederma, and actually you and I. My first point of contact with Croda was directly with you, and we walked this journey together with the Sederma team and Dr. Damien Kelly, etc., and the rest of the guys, for a number of years to the successful clinical outcome that we've just had. So if I could hand over to you, if you could just talk us through your career and why you chose Croda and why you stayed there for so very long.
So thank you. I joined Croda after completing my postgraduate degree in 1987, and remained with Croda until I left earlier this year, and June this year, in fact, just a few months ago. It's been a great company to work for. I joined as a research scientist, working initially on biotechnology, in fact, and developing a process for lactic acid. And then a couple of years after, 3 years after, I was promoted to managing Croda's cosmetic ingredients business, predominantly proteins, so specialty proteins for cosmetic use. And that's the area I worked in for quite a number of years, and developed some expertise in developing these novel materials for applications in skin and hair. And then in 2003, there was a reorganization in the company, and I was asked to look after Croda's R&D in Europe for both personal care and healthcare. And then post that, in 2005, the then CTO, Chief Technical Officer, and I set up a unit called Enterprise Technologies, which was really looking at open innovation, acquisition of new technologies to bring into the company, finding small companies to work with, etc., and universities. And then after that, I set up Croda's biotechnology team in 2008, and they've developed now into a sizable team. And then I spent another couple of years in what was a business called Sun Care and Biopolymers. And then in 2014, I was invited to the board of the personal care business. It was a global board, and my role was as Vice President R&D, looking after the global R&D for personal care. Stayed in that role for about 6 years. And then the final couple of years at Croda, I worked with the new CSO as a Vice President for Customer Alliances for Technology Development, really to work with some of the larger customers that Croda deals with, to see whether there any technical collaboration that would be possible between the companies. So overall, really, my role has been very much technical, research, and predominantly in the personal care market.
You have a fascinating career over, 37 years?
37 years and 4 months.
37 years, man and boy, as they say, man and boy, yeah. And connecting it to some of the biggest companies in the world, and so working with some real powerhouses.
Absolutely. So, you know, there's a lot of customers in the cosmetics industry, thousands in fact, but it's really connecting with the key, the large players, and working with those. And you know, they're the players that take time to develop things in the market. So patience is required normally.
Speaking of patience, I was just going to move on to talking a little bit about the technical process that Sederma very vigorously go through in developing a new cosmetic ingredient. I think we all of our investors and our shareholders know that this has taken 5 years. I know that Cecile and the team are very proud and delighted that it's taken 5 years. I think that some of our investors are a little frustrated that it's taken 5 years, but I gather 5 years rather than 7 is quite the achievement. So if you could just talk a little bit about what that kind of process looks like.
Yeah, obviously can't go into any significant detail. A lot of the processes that Sederma have are proprietary and quite confidential, but we've certainly seen through the work that we've done on the project, that SBT have done with the project and Sederma, that they've gone through a very logical, structured approach to developing this new product, and they use similar approaches for many of their other products. And that really starts with, initial screening. I don't know whether you're aware, but in the industry, we talk about TRL, technology readiness level, and it goes from level 1 up to level 9. And you start at level 1, TRL 1, which is really the research. And although SBT had done some of that work initially and had proposed that to Sederma, they also needed to look at that, to reproduce it, and be happy that it's something that would be of interest to them. And it was. And that's when we first had our conversations to it. They then had to develop that in producing materials that they could test in vitro, do analysis on, look at, a little bit of tox at that time as well, to make sure that the material was usable going forward. And as you're aware, we also had some issues with the strain, that the original strain could not be used commercially. And so then they had to find another strain, and then almost start from scratch to develop that and try and reproduce the results again. So that took a little time as well. And once they've done that, they then start looking at the process, the development of the process, what media is used to develop that process, is it commercially available? So that takes a lot of effort and time to do that. And then once they've done that, they start to do more process development in terms of downstream processing, optimization, and that also takes considerable amount of time to do that. And eventually, when they're happy and they've got material, they're happy with the process, the samples go to the evaluation team, and then the evaluation team start to do more studies, in-depth studies, which could be in vitro, ex vivo, and then in vivo, as we've seen. They have to do toxicology. We have to look at, or they had to look at regulatory matters as well. Where can this product be used globally? And all that takes time and effort. And from what we've heard, everything looks very positive. So all being well, it'd be a successful product in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I was delighted to hear that, having been asked for an extension of 12 months in order to do those clinicals, those in vivo studies, both externally and internally, that the call that thankfully you were present on as well on our side of the table this time was very positive. And as they said, the results were good. They were very good indeed, and it was all sort of green lights from here on in. So very, very, very pleased indeed on that. And I gather there've been some discussions with some customers already, and there've been some discussions about formulations, etc., with key accounts, and that samples are now going out, on a wider scale. And once this hits the full commercial ramp, it kind of picks up pace. So speaking about the process there, let's talk about Sederma's caution. They've been, from the beginning, they've been extremely cautious in what information they've released to us. And I was once, you were present in the meeting, being told that it's dangerous for Sederma to work with small cap companies, particularly small cap companies that are listed, given that sort of news flow is our lifeblood. I think the guys were very, very guarded indeed about what is there. Can you explain the reason for that for our shareholders?
Yeah, Sederma are one of the leading companies in skincare actives and has been for many, many years. But over the years, there has been a lot of competition that's come into the same space.
Yeah.
The last thing you want is to reveal what you're doing to a competitor. The competitor either tries to do the same or files IP, and that would just destroy the project in effect. And even with customers, we have to be so careful, because customers would want exclusivity, and generally,
right,
suppliers don't want to give exclusivity. They want to supply everyone in the cosmetics industry. So again, to prevent IP being generated by potential customers, so that they can supply more globally. So that has to be protected. And so that's why Sederma and indeed many other companies would be very, very cautious as to what they say during the development process. And obviously generating IP is another issue that needs to be resolved.
Damien said to me last week, Dr. Damien Kelly had said, we are at the most critical phase of this project. The research and development and all of the wonderful work that's been carried out, as well as the clinicals and the studies at the end, are all very well, and you wouldn't have any commercialized had you not passed every one of those hurdles and milestones. But now is where it becomes quite dangerous, and use that phrase used in World War II: loose lips sink ships. I think our shareholders need to understand that this is a very, very competitive market, extremely competitive, as competitive, if not more, than the healthcare and medical devices market. And the prizes are huge. So people tend to use all sorts of tactics in order to block you. And as you've said, listening to what claims we're making and filing IP and gaining prior art on that, which would block any IP that we were putting in, and also talking too much about which customers, when and where, is critical. So, well, I think our investors and our shareholders are beginning to understand that. I think it's a cause of celebration, and it's a relief that we are at the end of the clinical studies, and that they were positive. I mean, we could have come to the end and said, sorry guys, this didn't work, but that's not the case. For them to say they were good, they were very good indeed, is certainly cause for celebration. So finally, we just wanted to talk a little bit about global brands. Sederma, who were acquired by Croda for that very reason. They are, I think we want to say experts in their field. That's a lengthy process, right?
Yeah, I mean, Sederma were acquired in 1996, I believe, from memory, and they were a small French company that was producing skin actives, one of very few, if not the only one, really. And their business was very much in France, and Croda acquired them and basically gave them the opportunity to expand their business globally through Croda's reach globally. And that developed that business, greatly, and it's become a great success. What they do very, very well, and the products they produce have a lot of science behind them, and the majority of customers that really understand skincare will go to the likes of Sederma first and foremost.
Yeah, and I think we're beginning to see now that this is a tried, tested, and proven process that is delivered multiple blockbuster products to the market. And I think we would be very foolish to challenge that and to ask for things outside of the norm, which clearly make the Sederma team, and I now gather the commercial team, very nervous indeed. On that subject, we have negotiations with the Sederma team and with the Croda team throughout the rest of October and into November on the commercial agreement. And obviously we'll report back to the market on what we are able to say, what we are permitted to say after that. So, Das, thank you very much for your time. Welcome aboard. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to have you on board. I think I might just close by saying that we are working on some other projects that we're not able to talk about that are very interesting. And as soon as we get some traction on them, we'll report back. But Das, once again, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir.
So there you hear it directly from Dr. Surinder Chahal. Let's just go through some of the points raised there. The science that was put to them in November of 2019 is now fully clinically validated. The results, in their words, weren't good. They were very good indeed. 2 studies, as I said previously, an internal study and, most importantly, a third-party external independent study. This massively increases the value of this core science. This is now validated. The results are highly confidential. We are not in a position to put them in the public domain for all of the reasons that Das just explained. The moment that we start putting claims out there and beating our chest saying, look how good we are, that raises the attention of competitors who can then go and file blocking claims of IP, which will give them prior art and stop any patents that we are in the process of filings. Let's just also clear up the whole issue about samples being produced and issued. Samples are produced in a 600-litre vessel, quite simply because it's more cost efficient than firing up a 20,000-litre vessel. That would be truly using a sledgehammer to open a peanut. It's just not necessary. People got very confused about that. Maybe we should have made that a lot clearer in the last RNS, but I'll come on to RNSs a little bit later on. Marketing has well and truly commenced. Samples have gone out to customers and have been going out for quite some time. This is absolutely a phased launch. We're not going to divulge intricate details about which customers are getting which product, when and where, who are classed as key, who are classed as VIP, which regions are given priority. None of that will be divulged for all of the reasons that we've just explained, or Das has just explained. This is a very delicate process. What we want to do here is win. The good news here is this is not binary anymore. This is absolutely happening. You've heard from Croda that the clinical trial was a success and they're moving into commercialization. You've just heard from the former head of that division that that's absolutely what is happening and why that's happening. And I must say, I'm personally delighted that Das is sitting on our side of the table. The commercial agreement that we're discussing now, and we'll take some time, this talks about multiple areas: minimum order required, minimum sales required, the filing of intellectual property, where that sits and who owns what, forecasts, phasing of launch geographically, the timing of that, etc., etc. And the reiteration all the way through it, every meeting we have is tight, loose lips sink ships, confidentiality. Let's keep this tight, keep it close to our chest, etc. I think we've got past the dangerous bumps in the road. This is not a case of will we get through the clinicals, will the valorization work, what will happen when it's scaled up to a 600-litre vessel, what about a 2,000-litre vessel, what about a 20,000? That's all done and behind us. We are launching this product with the most successful cosmetic ingredient manufacturer on the planet. As he said, as Das said, and he's a very guarded man, as are all of the people that we deal with at Sederma. We could have a runaway success on our hands here. We've got to hold this close to our heart. Anything that jeopardizes that, we will shut down straight away. We've got a winner on our hands and we need to keep it right there in our hands. With regards to this trade show, I wasn't joking about the request that I had. Somebody asked me if I could tell Croda to move this show. Quite frankly, I did respond to that particular investor. That's just not within my power or Croda's power. This is the biggest cosmetics ingredient show on the planet. It is enormous. The exposure that we get at that trade show is unprecedented. It would have been wonderful if our clinical studies had finished in September and that trade show happened to be in October. That's just not the way the world works. It's in April next year. That gives us between now and April to continue to get the samples out, continue to talk to key customers and launch this on the platform that it truly deserves. Some of the stats there are over 1,000 corporate exhibitors. So companies that are attending there, over 1,000. There's over 12,000 visitors every single day. There's all sorts of products on show. And the top 10 biggest global suppliers in the world, including Croda, present at this show. So it is the right platform for us. It's the right thing to do, without doubt. Let's talk a little bit now about axisBiotiX PS, our psoriasis product. Sales continue to grow. At the moment, we're in the process of seeking formal accreditation by the National Psoriasis Foundation in the United States. We're going through their clinical examination panel, and we've had multiple calls with them. That would support heavily the launch of the product in the United States. We're also moving on the acne product. That advanced formulation is in progress, and we still do anticipate a launch this calendar year in 2024. What I would do is I would caveat that with the statement that we would very much like to launch the right carrier here. The formulation looks like it's spot on. We should know within the next couple of weeks whether that requires any tweaks. But what I will say is that we've always said we'd like to launch this in a gum rather than a powder. So a capsule or a gum is our preferred route to market. So we're hoping to launch this year. If that moves into January or February next year, because we're looking for the right carrier, then so be it. I'd rather do this right than do it in a hurry. Multinationals, as we've always said, require evidence of multiple product lines that are scalable. And I think this is where we really come into our own now. Once we get acne on the market, we prove we can do it not only once, but twice, and we can continue to do this across other skin conditions. Our discussions are still continuing with 2 national high street retail chains, and are going very well indeed. And we also now, with the acquisition that was announced in the RNS, we will come on to detail that in a moment, we now have the capability to produce capsule versions of this product in-house in our own manufacturing facility. Just a little bit about MediBiotics. You remember we talked quite a lot and have done for some time about enhanced barrier protection around an open wound, preventing the spread of infection. And that's very specific and very targeted towards hard to heal wounds, diabetic foot ulcers, venous leg ulcers, which costs the NHS, in fact, healthcare systems globally, a vast amount of money. If we can prevent it and stop amputation of feet, etc., because of diabetic foot ulcers, then obviously that's considerably less onerous and less costly to the healthcare providers. So this is a very advanced area of wound care. Also, we talk about a different variation of the technology used to accelerate wound closure, accelerating the closure of an open wound using lysated bacteria. So we are in discussions, and we continue in discussions with the 2 largest advanced wound care companies in the world. They are quite complicated discussions, technically and commercially. This would look like a joint development program with an upfront payment for exclusivity, and we would work for 2 to 3 years, accumulating that in a clinical trial prior to commercialization. Very much like the Croda arrangement, where we would receive a royalty, so it would be very much passive income for us. And they do continue. I felt it important to let you know that we hadn't let this go. We've talked over the last year about inorganic opportunities, about acquisitions. Let's be honest about what they are. We talked about them either bringing revenue, accretive acquisitions, looking at skincare from the inside out or the outside in, so either topicals or food supplements. This is a highly fragmented market, but it was always about consolidation of dermatology companies. Either they bring revenue or they bring science, so next generation science, anything that was microbiome driven, and anything that can accelerate our systems or future-proof our portfolio. So they were the 2 criteria, really the 2 elements that fed into the validation, which is they had to be revenue generating. They would have to attract multinationals closer to us and accelerate our path towards profitability. And to that end, I am delighted to announce that this morning we close, or certainly in the very early hours of the morning. I don't really want to go into how close to the line this came. Some people were asking why an RNS wasn't issued on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. Well, quite frankly, this came down to, as these things regularly do, right down to the wire. At 5:15 this morning, there was a potential that we were going to have to pull this IMC presentation and not issue the RNS until the next week. There are some quite odd and peculiar reasons why that was. Nothing was wrong. We just needed signatures from people who were in the far-flung corners of the world and were not easily accessible. So let's talk about BioTech Solutions. They are a manufacturing company. They have their own product line, but they also manufacture, the contract manufacturers. They're located in Driffield and the East Riding of Yorkshire. It's a manufacturing plant with warehousing, 23 members of staff. It operates only one shift, and that shift runs over 4.5 days a week. They finish early afternoon on a Friday. They produce liquids, topical creams, lotions, potions, etc. And they also have the capability to produce tablets and, very interestingly, capsules. They are ISO certified in all the in relevant areas, and they have the ability, very importantly, to manufacture the entire Dermatonics product range. So without further ado, I'd like to run you another short video. This is an introduction to BioTech Solutions from the founder himself, Mr. Ian Moulds. Mark, if you could play that video, please. Ian, thanks for agreeing to join us today. I just thought it would be a good idea to introduce you to the market, to our investors and our potential investors, to talk a little bit about yourself, about your background, about how BioTech Solutions came around, and a little bit of background about the company. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ian Moulds, who is the founder and managing director of BioTech Solutions. Over to you, Ian.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. Well, originally, I was from the agricultural industry, actually, and some 20 odd years ago, in 2000 actually, I changed tack and moved from the businesses that I'd been involved in agriculture. Saw a niche developing in the healthcare sector, and I knew somebody who had a property and a business, a small business, in the premises in which we are now at, actually. And over some time, we evolved the idea of starting a company, and we called it BioTech Solutions. And the idea there was to make new healthcare products, and we were involved a little bit in the veterinary sector and some products for agriculture still, which was the initial connection. But having been there for a little while, we decided it was a much better opportunity to look at the healthcare sector for human products, use in the human sector. And from there, we went on to develop manufacturing facilities in this place in a town called Driffield, which is in East Yorkshire, about 25 miles east of York, if anybody knows this area. Great rugby tradition in this region, if anybody's interested in that sort of thing. Anyway, we did manage to get started in the healthcare sector, and we looked at all sorts of opportunities as a contract manufacturer, and over time we realized that there was significant opportunities in the medical device sector, and we had a look at that and got 1 or 2 products going, and it's the business side has developed from there, adding cosmetic products for brand holders, and we also deal with the NHS, and that's when I started BioTech Solutions, which was to do product development and marketing products. That was the initial reason for starting BioTech.
So 22 years later, are there 2 or 3 sort of milestone events that have kind of taken the business from, let's face it, quite humble beginnings to where it is today, which is sort of multi-million-pound business, and
Yeah.
very good at what you do also.
Yes, it was obviously a very steep learning curve in the first place. We were actually initially doing a lot of pet care products. Probably 70% of the business was initially pet care or farm animal products. But 30-40% of the business was in fact doing healthcare products, and we supplied infection control products to hospitals. And so it was quite a diverse business at that time, and we saw a really nice opportunity, we thought, for the business was to go into the medical device sort of era, because you're dependent on each other. The customer is reliant on the manufacturer and vice versa. And through the advent of technical agreements and things, it works very well because you're tied through obligation and agreements to each other, and it's been tremendous. Some of those agreements also, some of those customers, sorry, also have cosmetic products as well. So one thing led to another, and it's been really very interesting. And certainly since the advent of COVID, it's been really very good for us, because we got a lot of business from companies who were manufacturing overseas, who wanted to bring their products into the UK, and it's changed the business, frankly, in 4 years.
And certainly that's one of the things that attracted us to you, was that blend of cosmetic capability as well as medical device and healthcare topicals as well, which is exactly in our sweet spot. So yeah, we don't have much experience in pet care and pig farming, so I'm delighted that you're not in that field anymore, because that would be very difficult to sell to our investors. But
indeed,
as specialists in this sort of personal care, infection control, cosmetics, hygiene, that sort of stuff, that's really attractive to us and a perfect fit. And as you're obviously aware, one of our group companies, Dermatonics, have a range of products in the podiatry sector, which, during our diligence we've gone through and we've looked at that, and that again is a very compelling reason for the acquisition, the fact that you are capable of manufacturing those products. So
yes.
If we could just talk about now a little bit about the actual the facility, the plant, and the capability. So you currently operate how many shifts?
Well, at the moment, we're able to only operate on one shift, which is quite remarkable considering the output that we have achieved over the last couple of years. So therefore, there's significant room for expansion. The factory is around 35,000 square feet. We employ 23 people, 17 of which are on the factory floor. We've done quite a bit of improvement in terms of mechanization. More could be added should the need be. But at the moment, we're coping very well with a single shift with the level of business we have. Obviously, that could be exploited and look at another shift or shift patterns. But the facility could get through quite a lot more work with said mechanization and organization.
Okay, well, so there's an opportunity to extend that shift over weekends for the overtime, and also to add maybe another shift on top of that should the operation requirements demand.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. We've got a great team at the moment. Obviously, we may need more people, but that if you get a reputation as a good employer, you can attract people.
And worthy of note, there's plenty of warehousing capacity there as well for finished goods.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. About almost half the space is taken up with warehousing, actually, because there's a lot of packaging, a lot of raw materials, and yes, there's also room to extend such if ever it was needed.
I'm sure everyone would like to know why you're selling the business. I mean, you built this from literally the ground up, from a very diverse background, and after 22 years have a very profitable and very well respected business with an excellent production facility, great quality control, etc., etc. A lot of people are going to say, well, if it's that good, why is he walking away? Why is he selling? So I know the answer to that, but for the sake of our audience.
Time and tide stand still for no man, apparently.
Yeah,
not even me.
Yeah.
And so, we've been seeking, a way forward or way out, if you want to put it that way, for several years. And there's been, numerous opportunities, or a few opportunities, some of which were okay, some weren't. But I just felt it was getting to be time when I should be thinking about moving on and to hopefully richer pastures or something anyway. And my wife thought, as having been in contact with SKINBIOTHERAPEUTICS, seemed an ideal opportunity for the staff, for the landlords, for everybody, that inadvertently for us, a way out probably, and SKINBIOTHERAPEUTICS seemed to be a really good outfit who can take this on and take it further. And we were at one time concerned in the past about the business not continuing. Well, I want one of my prerequisites was that it should, and that all the people will be employed gainfully, and it could go on and hopefully expand. Well, I have family. My son is in the computer business. My daughter is a doctor, GP. Unfortunately, neither of them are wanted to take over the reins, so we had to think of something else, and this seemed like a really good opportunity for everybody.
I thought it quite amusing when we met your wife and yourself. When your wife made a comment that you'd had a number of approaches to sell the business, all of which you'd declined because it wasn't the right fit for the workforce or for yourself, or the time wasn't right. But I thought it rather amusing that she'd said you're not going to need a diligence lawyer if you turn this offer down. You're going to need a divorce lawyer. So yeah,
yes, it was mentioned. Yes. Yeah. But she's she's wholeheartedly behind this. She thinks, she's obviously been in touch with all the information that's been flowing, and she's very much behind it.
Indeed, as they say, behind every good man stands a good woman. Finally, just to close this off, we'll obviously get asked some questions by our investors and our shareholders to say, look, you guys haven't run manufacturing plants. In reality, we kind of have between the team. But what makes you think that you can do this without Ian and the team? So are you sailing off into the sunset, or are you going to stick around a little? I mean, I know the answer to this, but I'd like you to hear it from you directly on camera.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I'm very still very interested in the business, keen the business continues. We're not going anywhere not physically anyway, and certainly for some time, we've had an arrangement to be involved with the business going forward for another year or so, or whatever it takes. And pleased to be involved, and it'll be illuminating for me as well, I'm sure. Yes, so we're not going anywhere.
Well, we're delighted to hear that. Ian, you've left an incredible legacy for your workforce, and we've now got to follow in your footsteps and build this, and keep up your high standards and build this into something bigger and better if we're capable of doing that, and I'm sure we are. The introduction of the Skinbiotix products and some other ideas that we have and we've discussed with you should see this move on to a very, very busy plant and a happy workforce indeed. Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you very much. It's been a great opportunity for us as well. Thank you. Thank you, Ian. Thanks for your time. Okay, take care. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Stuart. Just to echo Stuart's comments earlier, we are delighted to have made this really critical strategic acquisition. A lot of hard work has gone into getting this over the line over the last few days, getting it done in the early hours of this morning. So Stuart's discussed the background of BTS. So from a financial perspective, I'll cover that now. So BTS, in their last financial year to 30th of June 2024, which is aligned to the SKINBIOTHERAPEUTICS group, they did 2.1 million of revenue and 500,000 of EBITDA. For the year ended June 25, they are forecasting to do 3 million of turnover and about 1.1 million of EBITDA after execution of some group synergies. What I will say is, these synergies do take some time to implement and embed, and we've already started the integration process today, and we will push on with that process over the next few weeks. The 3 million and 1 million of EBITDA, 3 million of revenue and 1 million of EBITDA, they will be pro forma numbers when I come on to the next slide. So what I mean by pro forma is on a 12-month basis. We have acquired BTS during our financial year, so we should not expect for that full 3 million to drop into our financial statements when we present our results for the FY 25 to 30th of June. The financing of the deal, as you'll have seen through the RNS, was a mixture of debt, equity, and cash reserves. So the debt instrument has been secured with the fixed assets of the group. The interest rate is 13%, which we will be paying quarterly for the first 2 years, and in the last year we'll pay the interest and the capital at the back end. We see this as an excellent piece of financing, which is in line with market rates for businesses of our stage of development. The equity element, there was £250,000 of that issued, and this all went to David Briarwood, who is a long-term shareholder of the business and recently came on the register as a large shareholder in the summer of 2024. BTS is a scalable business. Ian Moles has just described, their shift patterns and how much capacity they've got. So our intention is to, really grow that business quite significantly over the next few years. As I mentioned, and I'll cover this on the next slide, our pro forma group turnover. So assuming we had all businesses from the start of July 2024, without Croda, without axisBiotiX, Acne, or any further joint development agreements, we're looking at a turnover of 6.3 million, which when you look back 12 months ago is a significant increase on the 250,000 or so we forecasted. The combined EBITDA of the acquisitions pre-group costs is circa 2.2 million. Including the group costs, the group would be past EBITDA break even at that point on a pro forma basis. I'd like to talk you through how we get to the 6.3 of EBITDA and the of revenue and the EBITDA break even. So as I mentioned, this is all on a pro forma annualized basis. So assuming that we had all acquisitions on day one. In our previous RNS, we discussed the performance targets for both SKINBIOTHERAPEUTICS and dermatonics. So 400,000 of revenues from axisBiotiX, 2.9 million in dermatonics. SKINBIOTHERAPEUTICS obviously incurs most of the group costs and the PLC costs associated, so a loss of 1.8 million there. A profit of 700,000 of EBITDA in dermatonics. When you add that to the 3 million within BTS and then 900,000 of expected pre-synergy EBITDA, and you factor in the EBITDA, the group synergies thereafter, that's how you arrive to the 6.3 million of revenues on an annualized basis and the 400,000 of profitable EBITDA on a 12-month basis. We will be issuing update forecasts once the integration process is underway and we have visibility on the synergy plan execution. Thank you.
Okay, just in closing now, and as a summary, if you look at basically what we've achieved over the last year and walk through these pillars, Croda's on track. It's in commercialization now. The clinical trials have come to a very successful completion. Samples are out there and widespread being issued out there. This is all green lights. That's a direct quote from a meeting that Das and myself and Manpreet were present in. The commercial agreement is being negotiated through October, November, and there's very high expectations internally at Sederma here. axisBiotiX, we're pursuing the National Psoriasis Foundation accreditation in the United States to facilitate and support the launch of that product. And the acne launch is due this year, subject to a suitable carrier. We are quite confident that we can find that, and we may well go over the Christmas line and into the new year, but with a fair wind, we should get this done. On projects, the inflammation project continues on. As you know, we are just about in the middle of that. As soon as we have any readouts and information on that, we will report back. Remember that this is a your blank piece of paper from the ground up study. This is a very complex study indeed. That's led by Professor Cath. Staying at the University of Manchester, the oral program that we have with Professor McBain, we're at a point now where we need to either commit capital to that or secure grant funding. Given that we secured grant funding for the next project, which is Project Epiderm, that is the likely path that we'll take. That will take us a little bit of time to secure that funding in order to continue that oral program. Project Epiderm has only just begun. It is fully grant funded, and we had a meeting on Monday last week. Sorry, I beg your pardon, Monday this week with the project team, where we made significant progress there. And again, as we reach milestones, then we will report on them. And then there's the SKINBioTX program that we're looking at for advanced wound care. And again, I spoke about that earlier. We are in discussions with the two very biggest advanced wound care providers in the world. In terms of mergers and acquisitions, that's 2 acquisitions now complete. We did one in January and one in October. So in 10 months, we've delivered 2 acquisitions. They offer routes to market as well as strategic manufacturing capabilities. And we do have a pipeline of further accretive acquisition opportunities should we decide to pursue them. From a financial perspective, and just underpinning what Manpreet has just said, the combined projected turnover was in excess of 6.3 million on an annualized basis. If you look at where we were in December last year to where we are looking forward now, that is a 2,525% increase in revenue year on year. I'll just say that again, 2,525% increase revenue year on year. I would challenge you to find another listed AIM company that's delivered that or is about to deliver that. EBITDA break even and a cash runway through to the summer of 2026. That it's been a painful year in many respects. We came under significant criticism for the financial vehicle that we used to acquire Dermatonics. We got rid of that. We exited that in less than 6 months. 6 months into a 2-year program. We did decide internally that we would not execute the second acquisition until we cleared the financing vehicle for the first acquisition, and we did just that. So I did promise you that I would transform the company this year, that we would transform the company. It would be unrecognizable. And I think a 2,525% increase on annualized revenue is transformational, and it is unrecognizable from what it was. We now have in-house manufacturing capability, and we now have global reach with the Dermatonic products. And all of this is without any input from Croda. That is now secured in the bag. It is absolutely happening. And there are exciting things happening in all of the other projects. Rome wasn't built in a day, and I'm not perfect. We have hit delay after delay after delay. What I will say is the team has showed remarkable resilience and tenacity to stick with it, despite the slings and arrows that we've received, to deliver a financial performance that is the start of things to come. There's a lot more to add to this. We will not rest until this group is in significant profitability, and I will not rest until the share price is over £1. That is pretty much the end of the presentation. So if I may, I'll answer some of the questions.
That's great, Stuart, Manpreet. Thank you very much indeed for updating investors. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of the screen. Just while Stuart and Manpreet take a few moments to review your questions submitted already, I'd just like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. Stuart, given the significant attendance on your call today, you'll find the questions have been prioritised for you under the Q&A tab. There's a little tab to priority. Just given there's a number of questions that have been duplicated, similar themes. So if I may just hand back to you, Stuart, just to read out those questions, and then we'll pick up from you at the end. So thank you.
Thank you. There's an awful lot of questions here. I'm not sure I'm going to get through them all, but I'll give it my best go between Manpreet and myself. A summary of a long question here about the 600-litre scale currently in progress. Basically, the question is asking, why are you talking about a 600-litre vessel when we talked about a 20,000-litre vessel? I think I answered that earlier. You would not fire up a 20,000-litre vessel to send samples out. That would be ridiculous overkill. It's just not economically viable. And I think we probably should have made a clearer explanation of that within the RNS. So I think we've answered that one. The next one from Mr. Gardner. Chris Gardner is asking, could you just confirm the following points? Yeah, samples have gone out to customers and have been going out for some time. The customers are in possession of samples. I've got to be very careful what I say about who's received what and when they received it. If it's been said in an RNS previously, it is a statement of fact. Our RNSs are diligently checked by our Nomad and by lawyers. So if we've made a statement in there, it's a statement of fact. We've had no change at all whatsoever in our expectation that forecasts and revenue will occur in this calendar year. Were we to receive notification of that, I would be duty bound legally to inform the market of that, and I would not hesitate to issue that. Be it bad news or not, I would absolutely report that to the market. So in answer to your questions, Chris, yes, you are correct on all points. The samples have gone out. We do expect forecasts and revenues in this calendar year. Yeah, the question from Jeremy E says exactly the same about Croda. Mr. Mark R. In conclusion, the only risk remaining to a successful launch of SKINBiotiX will be mitigated once SKINBiotiX and Croda agree who owns what IP and publicly files that IP before any competitor jumps in with their own IP first. That's an excellent question, and I think Das underlined that on multiple occasions throughout his brief chat. The need for confidentiality is critical now, absolutely critical. We do not want a competitor jumping in and filing our own IP based on claims that we've made in an IMC presentation. We don't want customers getting upset that they've received product before somebody else has, or they're not on a list that may or may not exist. So we have to be extremely careful what we do here. What we can say is that Sederma are not amateurs at this, and neither are Croda. They are hugely successful. They're the most successful cosmetic ingredient manufacturer and formulator in the world. They see the need for confidentiality now. They've publicly stated that this is going to be launched globally. They're already out there. The commercial team's talking to people, and they are publicly launching this to the whole world in April of next year. So this is happening, absolutely. There's a question from James H. Is the hope that SKINBiotiX may replace Matrixyl? Wouldn't that be lovely if we could take their £350 million worth of sales overnight? I think we've always stated that this will be a phased process. They're not going to flick the switch off on Matrixyl. This is a different product to Matrixyl. It does have clinical evidence behind it. I think the clinical trials now would allow Sederma and Croda to charge a higher price point for it, but that's not my gift to give or to present. That is in the hands of Sederma. As we've said before, they are the experts. They've delivered the likes of Matrixyl and multiple other products that are worth hundreds and hundreds of millions in revenue. We need to trust the experts on this. We've delivered what we can now. I will negotiate with them. And the IP is all about joint ownership. This is a smart partnership. We are talking to them about other projects, and I can't go into that. What I have always said to Croda and Sederma is, let's get this one over the line before we talk about anything else. I don't think our investors and our shareholders would thank us for entering into another 5-year agreement before we had this one actually generating some revenue. How and when do you plan to start using the new manufacturing facility, says David G. Will this facility reduce the cost associated with axisBiotiX and therefore reduce the purchase cost? If so, by what percentage? I'd love to be able to give you a finite answer to that. I can't at this moment in time, but I hope I will be able to at some stage in the future. The new manufacturing facility already generates £3 million worth of revenue. We intend to sort of push the dermatologics products through there again. That will bring some synergies quite quickly. And we are absolutely going to look at the capsule versions of axisBiotiX. It's one of the reasons that we bought the company. What will the price point be? I don't know. And when I do know, we will announce it on this forum. Now you have, James H is asking, now you have your manufacturing business. Can you manufacture your own skin cream using SKINBiotiX as your deal with Sederma allows you to buy at a cost from Sederma? Yeah, that is one of again, yet another reason why we bought Biotech Solutions, not just the dermatonic side of things, but also skin creams. There are multiple reasons why we bought this business, and that is one of them. And we will absolutely be looking at that. 13% seems a high interest rate to pay. Could you not find a cheaper rate? Manpreet, do you want to answer that?
Yeah. We did have a few term sheets on our table a few months ago, and the rates, had we taken one of those, are pretty eye-watering. Much higher than what we've paid. We have benchmarked, as I mentioned before, and we are pretty much in line with market. I think if you looked at any other financing on straight loans on AIM businesses or PE-backed businesses, you'll see that we are pretty much around the market rate. Obviously, this is not a residential mortgage. This is a commercial loan, so difference in those rates there is quite a significant difference in those two rates. So we feel that we've got a good deal. As I mentioned, the terms are very good in the sense that we are interest paying on a quarterly basis for the first 2 years, and then the last year is when we pay the capital and the remaining interest. We are not a FTSE 100, FTSE 250 business with a massive balance sheet where we can dictate rates to banks. I think as we embark on this growth journey and our balance sheet does strengthen, any further financing we do for any potential further acquisitions, we should see that financing rate come down.
Thank you, Manpreet. And I think we've only got time for one or two more. 7 months after the Umesh Modi launch, there appears to be only one Feet branded product with any visible internet presence. That's actually strictly not true. If you dig a little deeper, you will find multiple links to Umesh Modi products out there. Again, they are rolling the launch out. They're a big company. They know what they're doing. We're starting to see the increase in sales there. We will report that at the appropriate time. The deal with Modi is in its infancy. That will prove to be one of our seminal moments. Buying Dermatonics and the link with Modi, buying BTS that has the ability to manufacture products in-house, etc. These will be seen as the keystones of this company. And then finally, why are you only now pursuing National Psoriasis Foundation accreditation? That's not strictly true. We've been speaking to the NPF for a couple of years now. It's only just now that we've got enough data behind, enough sales data behind us that we can actually give them some solid statistics to allow the analysis. We've also got some new formulation data that we can put in front of, not just for psoriasis, but we've also got some additional stuff on acne, although that's nothing to do with NPF. I think that's all I've got time for on questions.
That's great, Stuart, Manpreet, and I know you got meetings and we are just slightly running over time, but thank you very much to you both for your time this morning. Congratulations on the announcement this morning. I know investor feedback is going to be particularly important to you both, so I'll shortly redirect all of those on the call to provide you with their thoughts and expectations. But before doing so, I wondered if I may, Stuart, just ask you for a few closing comments.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time, as always. I did say that we would communicate 6 times a year via this platform. Sometimes that's going to be exactly 8 weeks apart. Sometimes it might be 10 weeks. We'd like to hold off until we've got something significant to tell you, something significant to report, rather than a simple trading update. I appreciate that every 2 months we're not going to have something significant. Please do forgive me if we run a week or so over. We do we've been hauled over the coals for a number of things that we've done or been perceived to have done over the last calendar year, not least of all the convertible loan note. I must state yet again that was the only instrument that was available to us. It was, may I say, a necessary evil to get us to where we needed to be. It was a bridge to get us to where we had to be to start. Ironically, we should have closed Biotech Solutions first and Dermatonics second. There are complicated reasons why that didn't happen. I'm delighted that both of them are over the line. As I've said before, 6.3 million annualized turnover forecast now without anything from Croda. People talk about the price of the debt, etc. Croda coming through. We have the ability. There are no early payment redemptions in this facility that we have with Mr. Briarwood, who I'm delighted to have on board as a shareholder in the first place. But even further delighted that he has seen it fit to support this acquisition. We did have a number of term sheets on the table. This one was by far the best. We have the opportunity, should we need to pay this down as early as we can, or as early as we want to. This has been a long journey. I thank the team for the resilience and the tenacity, but I thank you all, shareholders, for your loyalty and your patience with this. I know this has not been easy. As I said previously, we will not rest until the share price is over £1. Both Manpreet and myself have options that are triggered up towards that sort of price and beyond. And I am very, very motivated to do this, not just for my own personal reasons. And in fact, not at all. It's more about proving that this company truly is the company that you invested in. Croda has been a long journey. It's at an end now. We'll start to see revenues flowing from that very quickly. We are now above EBITDA break even, and we have a lot more to come. Stick with us, because ultimately the ultimate destination will be worth the journey. Thank you.
That's great. Stuart, Manpreet, thank you once again. Can I please ask investors not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. This may take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of SKINBioTherapeutics, I'd like to wish you a good rest of your day.